up in the South.
I did.
You had a very big family.
Yes.
Were there 5 brothers, 3 sisters?
3 girls, 5 brothers, 3
Oh,
girls,
my.
total of 8.
What was that like?
My sisters were older than me.
You were the baby.
I was the baby. And so when I was 10 years old, they were dating boys. So they were not interested in me. So I had to hang out with my brothers. And I did what they did. Growing up in our family, we didn't have a lot of money. So if they raced down the street barefoot, I raced down the street barefoot. If they walked down the railroad tracks and dared to jump out, away from the train at the last minute, I kind of was doing that stuff too.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, you had terrific parents, from what I understand.
So, my father was born in 1913 in Mississippi. And he could have been, a very traditional man who had boundaries for his children. He did not. He was so proud of how, much energy I had and how much I was willing to take a risk. I mean, he felt like I was a mini version of him. My mother, her whole life and the way that she parented us was to constantly share sort of little bits of wisdom. So she would say things like, you see that girl over there and how she's hanging on that boy? We don't do that. You see that boy over there and how he's treating her? Don't ever let anyone treat you that way.
So now here you are, a high-level woman in the corporate workplace. And what are those lessons that you learned early on?
When there are 8 kids at the dinner table and everyone's fighting for that last piece of whatever, you learn to have a voice. My parents were also big on do what you say you're going to do, no excuses.
So you majored in journalism.
I did. My
Right?
undergraduate degree is in journalism.
But look at where you are now. What made the shift?
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories, and I don't even know where this gentleman is. His name is Dan McMillan. So Dan worked at Southwestern Bell. He was a director of public relations, and he was the advisor to the communications group at the university. And I was graduating from college, and I sent him a letter, dear Dan McMillan, here's my little resume. And he was kind enough to send me a letter back that said, dear Rose, congratulations on your achievements, but at Southwestern Bell, you have to have at least 2 years of real-world reporting experience before we will allow you to join our public relations department. Got it. I kept the letter. And 2 years later, I sent him a note. Dear Mr. McMillan, per your attached letter, I now have 2 years of experience. And I became an executive speechwriter and started an amazing career inside of the corporate setting.
You're in a male-dominated industry, and it's hard to navigate, but you're tenacious.
I'm not naive. I know that sexism exists. I know that racism exists. I grew up, a little black girl in Arkansas. And so I certainly have seen and felt and been, victimized to some degree by it. But I can't allow that to stop me from continuing to move forward. And so what you then need to do is be ready to perform and to deliver and to hold on to your power and not let difficult bosses or people that you perceive aren't supporters take away your power.
You're a risk taker, Rose.
I am. Certainly there are moments where I have doubt, because we all do.
Yes.
Life is a journey, and none of us escape those spaces where you feel unsure, uncomfortable, afraid, or gosh, I made the wrong decision, but you have to see it through. And once you do that, you begin to realize what you're capable of, and you're willing to take risks. My whole career has been one risk after the other.
Yes. About 4 years ago, Rose, your life took a dynamic change. Family, work. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, I was busy doing my, job in a profit and loss, role inside of one of the divisions at Verizon. And lo and behold, my husband had a stroke. And we started going through the whole journey and process of how could a completely healthy man just suddenly have a stroke. And thank God that he didn't die.
Your mother also had Alzheimer's.
Yes, Watching someone go through that journey is difficult and challenging. And it's interesting with my mother. She would tell us growing up when we went to funerals, she would always say, oh my God, look at all those flowers. Give me my flowers while I'm living. I remember when we first put her in the nursing home, which was so hard for us. Her birthday happened in May, and every sibling and every grandchild sent her flowers. And the nursing home said to us, we have never ever seen this many flowers come in for anybody.
Rose, that must have been such a difficult time for you. You had a huge operational job. Your mom having Alzheimer's, your husband was ill.
It resulted in our rethinking our whole life. You only have one life, and you have to make sure that you live it with the right priorities. And while my family has always been a priority, this made it clear who I was. And I had to rethink my career.
So now you're doing amazing work. You love
I
heading
love what
the
I
foundation,
do. That's right.
and
That has become my passion.
one of your passions is education, education for all youth.
Yeah, so my mother loved to read, and what she passed on to me was the love of books. So to some degree, it's almost full circle for me. At Verizon, we believe that technology is now the new literacy. So we build a whole range of programs that put underserved individuals, women, little girls, and people of color on the path toward having amazing careers in science and technology and engineering and math. So I think sometimes the blessing is in the burden. And we have to be able
I love that,
to
Rose.
see that. And then my husband's amazing. I mean, no one looks at him and believes this is a man who's had 2 strokes. I mean, he uses a cane now, but he's wonderful and handsome and amazing and positive.
So the woman out there now that's struggling, what would you say to her?
The most painful moments in our life, the most difficult moments, oftentimes do come to an end, and things do get better. And they may not ever be the same, but they will change. And you have to be able to know that that's coming.
So hang in there.
So hang in there and just get through it. And frankly, don't be afraid of the pain.
Yes. And so what would you say to that little Rose that was in elementary school, knowing big, wonderful Rose now?
That always makes me want to cry, right? Because I think so much about just all the uncertainties of little Rose. And I think about my sense of confidence. And while I had a good, amount of it, I also had areas that I struggled with, around self-esteem. And I would look at her and say, you are enough.
Yeah.
And you're going to be amazing. So put that book down and get outside and play.
And you are amazing, Rose.